Hey, Bobby Manning here, CLNS Media, Celtics All Access. Welcome to the Garden Report. We're just a couple blocks from Madison Square Garden here from an undisclosed location. And as promised, CLNS Media will have coverage of Celtics Knicks tonight, mercifully, after the 99-97 loss to the Spurs last night. Kemba's out. Don't have to worry about him dropping 30 on the Celtics again. I believe Nerlens Noel is out in conditioning as well. And the Celtics, essentially as they stood last night, going against the Spurs, they'll try to get a win tonight. So more on that later. Stay with us for post-game, as well as coverage live from Madison Square Garden. I'm checking in on the All-Star race. Results coming today from a Celtics perspective. Tatum, 4th in the front court voting. That bodes well for him besides Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant in that area. Of course, Trae Young, DeMar DeRozan, those guys are relative locks at the guard spot with the years they're having. So there's 5 All-Stars right there. Tatum probably outside that starting range, but I do think he'll make the All-Star game. I'm going to rattle off some other names here in a second, but Jaylen Brown, nowhere to be found in the voting, top 10 in the front court. He doesn't have the games, first and foremost. I'll get rid of it right away. I don't have him in the All-Star team. So Brown, unless he does some work here over the next couple weeks, and obviously had a rough finish to that game last night, a 50-pointer against the Magic, I think Brown's lining up to be an All-Star snub, and Tatum might be right on the edge too. Let's get into some names here. So we had those 5 locks, Giannis, Durant, Embiid, Young, and DeRozan. You got to throw Zach LaVine in there as well with the year that he's having. I would also put Jimmy Butler in there. I would. I want to see him play. I don't think he necessarily has the games himself, but he's had a good enough year when he's been out there, and the Heat have been excellent. They need an All-Star representative. Bam is not going to be in play. I think he's missed way too many games to be into this. So I will include Jimmy. That gives us 7 without Tatum. I got to throw LaMelo Ball in there, who did excellent in voting, who's certainly a guy that you want to see out there come All-Star time. Jarrett Allen. Cavs deserve an All-Star, and he's been one of the best centers in the NBA, period. That brings us to 9. I get to 10 with Harden. I'm going to squeeze Harden in there just because. Why? Nets deserve 2 guys. He hasn't quite been himself this year, but you want to see him out there, and he certainly did strong in the voting as well if you go look at it. So that brings us to 10. I'm going to put Fred VanVleet in there. I think this is kind of an area where you have Drew Holiday, you have Miles Bridges on the edge here. I don't think the Hornets necessarily deserve 2 guys. So I'm squeezing in Fred VanVleet just because of the way he's kept the Raptors competitive, shot amazingly this year. Do they necessarily deserve a guy? I think maybe you look at putting in a Drew Holiday over him because the Bucks have been so good. They were champions. They probably deserve 2 guys. But I'm going to squeeze VanVleet in over him. I want to see him out there. I think he's deserving of squeezing in an All-Star game here. And yes, I'll give it to Tatum. I think Tatum's got the numbers. I think he's been dominant enough over this last month and a half. So I'm putting Tatum in there. So there's your 12. Put your complaints below. I won't knock anybody who wants to put Holiday in there. Bradley Beal is another snub. As I list those out, I originally had him on my list. Taking a deeper look at what he's done this year and what the Wizards have done as a whole, I'm not rolling with it, but I understand if the voters and the players certainly and the media want to squeeze him in there. Media, of course, is going to be a pretty significant part of it. Guys like Kyrie Irving, Derrick Rose showing up in the vote, they'll be completely X'd out by the media. I didn't see Ben Simmons on there. I don't think Ben Simmons was one of the finalists, which goes to show you how popular Ben is. So I did ask for questions here from New York. I'll take some of them. Let me get rid of this one first of all. The Bucks did cut DeMarcus Cousins. He's not coming to the Celtics. And bless him, one of my favorite players when he was at his best, one of the most dominant players in the sport. It's been sad to see his downfall. We certainly saw how rough he looked against the Celtics a couple weeks ago. Of course, off our chat last night, Thomas Satoransky makes $10 million. So that's a tricky one to match. You could clump together a young guy and Schroeder, but do you want to do that for him? He's certainly a guy who's available, I think, when the time comes. But I don't know if the $10 million at this point makes sense. It made some sense over the offseason when you could have eaten that, but I don't think so. Other questions here. Frank Ntilikina. I know Sherrod mentioned him last night. I don't know how available he'll be. I know he's not a big part of what the Mavericks are doing, but I don't think playoff teams usually unload guys like that. If you made a push for him, I'm sure they'd listen, but that's just not a trade I usually see happening. This one, will the Celtics start to play together under Udoka? I wrote last night that Rob's going to be the key to that. Putting the ball in the big men's hands. I like some of the stuff Jaylen Brown said last night. I hope we actually see that play out with the Knicks tonight. But do I imagine them changing this year? No. How can you imagine this team that's been doing this for a year and a half now, essentially, changing their ways? That's when you start to look at the composition of the roster here. Any other questions we got at this point? That's it for now. I'll put up some other stuff on Twitter. I'll answer some of them on Twitter. Make sure you keep sending them to us at Celtics CLNS throughout the afternoon. I'll keep looking at them throughout and answer them there. And we'll, of course, have live coverage from Madison Square Garden as promised tonight. Bobby Manning, CLNS Media. Support our sponsors, com.com/garden. 40% off a premium subscription. LinkedIn.com/garden for a free job post. I'll see you a couple blocks over at MSG for Celtics Knicks TNT tonight. 7:30 tip-off. You know that means 7:45.